We're living our truth now. Krista, what?
Krista who?
Christadelphian?
Did you say Christian dolphin? So are you from Philadelphia?
Welcome to the Life After Leaving podcast, an ex-Christadelphian podcast. Hello, heathens, and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Zinnia. Today's guest is Craig. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Zinnia. Lovely to see you. And wonderful work that you're doing. Wonderful work with that podcast.
Thank you. And now you get to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So today I'd like to hear your story of becoming an ex-Christadelphian. So I'd like to go through what your experience was like as a Christadelphian, what the process of leaving looked like for you, and where you're at now in life, and anything you'd want to share with people who may be going through a similar journey. So before we get started, could you first share what region of the world you were in and how long it's been since you left the Christadelphians?
I'm living in Sydney, Australia. I've always lived here. And it's been 42 years since I left the Christadelphians. So I sound like the old lady Rose from the movie The Titanic now.
That's pretty legendary. That's definitely up there for the number of years we've had on the podcast for sure. But I try to have a wide diversity, so that's great to hear.
But it's all very vivid in my memory, you know, conversations and things that I experienced. It's all very much in my mind, and there isn't a day that goes past where I don't think of things that happened while I was a Christadelphian.
Wow. Yeah, I think Sylvia said something similar as well. She found that it still kept coming up in life. So if you're ready, we'll start with your experience as a Christadelphian. So were you born into the group?
No, I'm one of the ones that came in from outside, as they say. Yes. And I started at the Christadelphian Sunday School at Cabramatta in Western Sydney when I was 13, but I did it against the wishes of my parents.
Oh, this is already an exciting story.
Yeah. So when I read the biography as a teenager of Robert Roberts and how he went against the wishes of his parents at 12, I started to identify with him, you see.
Okay.
But,
So you started attending at around 13?
That's right. I grew up in a non-religious family, but when I was 7 months old, my mother got poliomyelitis and was crippled by it and was in an iron lung for a year, and she was already 4 months pregnant. So that had a big effect on how I viewed life. You know that there's a disaster around the corner, anything could happen, things could be taken away as a child, and I started to become interested in Jesus because I saw these little 1-minute presentations on TV from the Gospels, you see. So
like ads from it, like it, or was it like sermons on TV, like on the free channels?
They sketched Jesus giving a parable or helping someone who was sick or whatever. And I thought, this is the kind of guy I wanted to be, you know, is kind, gentle, thoughtful, wise, all those sorts of things. And so I pulled my mother's Bible out of where she kept it, and I started to read it, but I couldn't quite understand. I couldn't understand what was going on. And when I was 13, I saw the movie The Poseidon Adventure, and I was very much taken with Gene Hackman.
You're the second one to bring that up.
Oh, right. Well, I was very much taken with the character of Gene Hackman, where he's a preacher, but he leads a small group against the wishes of other people, and they finally make it through. And I thought, well, this is what I need. I need some sort of guide, some sort of inspiring person to help me. So I had a friend from school who was the son of the recorder of Cabramatta Ecclesia, and when we were 13, he gave me some heralds, which are Logos magazine's preaching pamphlets. So I started reading that, thought it was quite logical, and so I asked to go to the primary school. So I started attending that when I was 13, and I was baptized. I went to Bible schools and Bible classes, and I was baptized when I was 16.
Wow, that's actually pretty fast, too. Only 3 years of study.
Well, I read a lot. I bought a lot of the books, and and I enjoyed it because I found that I could memorize it quite well, and I felt that I could write in the style that was acceptable quite well. So, and I believed it, of course.
Yeah. Oh, that is so interesting. I'm already really enjoying hearing this. It's such a unique experience that you had of finding yourself drawn in and looking for something and seeking something. And they were there with their pamphlets ready to go. Like, hey, we could help you with some of your questions. We've got answers for you. And it does. I feel like I was the same way growing up, where it felt kind of logical. There was like, well, here's the verse to explain it, and here's the theology and how this all ties together. And it always kind of like appealed to that when I was younger, before asking harder questions of it, perhaps. So it sounds like that would have been part of the main amended central group then.
Yes, Cabramatta Ecclesia is a Logos influenced ecclesia, and so it's amended in Western Sydney. It had about 50 brothers and sisters in it. It had a large Sunday school, but there was only ever one or two children there who were from outside. So I felt a bit isolated, and I was aware that some of the other the children of CDs were making fun of me behind my back, but I still kept on going. Just because things like my hair was just a little bit over my ear, and everyone else had crew cuts and things like that. So,
you just didn't fit in as much culturally, you mean? Like everyone kind of was being raised to the same standard of like Christadelphian looks?
Yes, but anyway, eventually I was able to make some friends outside of Cabramatta, peers, but I didn't get to see them that much because I was mainly focused in our little ecclesia.
Were you similar in age, you had said, to the other boy who had given you the pamphlets? Was that the case? Were you able to be with him at least?
The same age, but we drifted apart. Also became aware there was a bit of hypocrisy going on because some of the other young people secretly smoked or swore or that sort of thing, and I didn't do that, and I didn't think it was right and whatever. So it's a little bit isolating from that point of view.
Yeah, that makes sense too. There's always the cliques too, so I could see if they're not your vibe, then you're just not going to want to spend time together with your free time and all of that. So that makes sense. So your story really begins in like adolescence. Do you want to talk about what you remember about your early days going to Sunday school and attending the meeting, some of your initial thoughts, and we can go through some of your teenage years and experiences?
Yes. So I like visiting the other ecclesias when I could. So I visited, once I was baptized, I was able to do a lot of visiting to about 10 different ecclesias in Sydney.
Oh my goodness.
And
that's a lot.
About 7 ecclesias in Adelaide. I went to the Bible schools at Rathmines. I went to study weekends. I went to some ecclesias in Melbourne as well. And I gradually built up a network of people who I could talk with on deep subjects and develop some really deep friendships in Christadelphia. But often I was separated, distance-wise from them. But I got to hear a lot of very famous speakers, and I tried to pick up some things from them because I wanted to also do what they were doing. And I became aware of ecclesial politics going on, and big personalities and domination, and gradually I picked up that there was unhappiness with things like sisters being dominated by brothers and that sort of thing. And so I kept my ears open as well to what was not right in what was going on.
It wasn't a paradise. And I think, the longer you're in it, especially around the age group, seems like people start to become more aware of the other dynamics and that start seeing how things play out and change as they start transitioning into adulthood. So what were some of your favorite things about those early years? What kept you going?
Well, I absolutely love mixing with the wide range of ages that were in the ecclesias. I had never experienced before being able to enter easily into conversations with old people, young people, people in their 20s, married with children, that sort of thing. And I found I could just begin a conversation and even be invited to stay. And with some of the friends I made, let's say in Adelaide, I stayed for a month or over, and was able to absorb their family life, because that's something that I missed as someone from outside. Because after the meeting, I'd go home, and it was a totally different environment. No one was interested in what I was interested in, or wanted to talk about what I had been learning. But when I stayed with Christadelphian families, I was in that sort of like cocoon of like-mindedness, and so I was able to, I think, develop some strong ties then.
Yeah, and that Christadelphian hospitality, staying with someone for a month, that's really not unheard of, to be able to be absorbed into families and be part of their day-to-day life, as long as you're also Christadelphian, especially the younger ones, like teens and young adults.
As long as you're also Christadelphian, that's right.
Yes.
And the contrast between the love that I was experiencing in that environment and the relative indifference to people outside of Christadelphia, that was really strong thing that I noted, because my mother, who wasn't religious, was very active in things like charity. She was in a wheelchair, but she did things like knit for the poor. She read, did audio books for the blind. She supported an African child with part of her pension. She did a letter campaign for disabled people. But I wasn't seeing that sort of wide interest in society in Christadelphia. It was very narrowly focused.
Yeah, just in other people, where it wasn't just in their community, where it's kind of this closed community.
Obviously, they did things for Jewish charities, but other than that, I was not seeing much at all.
Yeah, and I only really heard also of like preaching efforts where it was tied to, if you come to meeting, if we can preach to you kind of thing, where I'd kind of hear some stuff with like Africa where they're trying to seed ecclesias, it sounded like. But yeah, I saw kind of the same thing. There wasn't a lot in our communities and our countries where we were.
Yes, well, with preaching, see, I was part of a little group that we went down to sort of like a speaker's corner in a park, the Domain, and we would preach there every month. But a lot of the brothers and sisters seem to think that their effort of preaching consists in sitting in the lecture and listening, rather than going out. And we did letter drops as well, but I didn't think there was as much concern as I would have expected about the other person and enlightening them if what we believed was true was true. That was just my impression.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting dynamic, because they assert that they have the one truth that could save you when nothing else could, upon the return of Jesus. But then they don't seem to do a lot of preaching of that necessarily, and what they do tend to do doesn't seem to be very effective from what I've seen when they did do like public lectures and things.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that could have been better. We had an old couple came in from outside, and they were really struggling because the Bible class was about Revelation. It was all about
that's an intense place to start.
And they were babes who needed nourishment, and they were getting chaff, really. And they struggled, and they became depressed, and left. And I just thought there were a lot of things that could have been done much better in a pastoral senses, caring for people.
Yeah, I think that's another thing. How they treat people determines who stays and who it appeals to also in the broader community.
We had a brother say that we didn't need to do special preaching efforts. We just need to have the lectures on the Sunday, and whoever God wanted to bring to the truth, he would make it so they would come. So you didn't have to go out and spread the net.
That's convenient. You don't have to do any work.
But then I started to see that some, not all, but some had this attitude that they were Christadelphians because God wanted them to be in the kingdom, as opposed to, let's say, other people who weren't.
That's what I was raised to believe. Because you were there, you must have been chosen, was kind of the idea.
Yeah. A brother gave an exhort that said, I don't know why Yahweh wants me in the kingdom, but he does. And
That seems very confident, man.
yeah, very confident. And another brother said that the reason he thought that there were so many Christadelphians in his family, and there were generations of them going back, was because there must have been something that passed on, inherited character that God wanted to save.
Like
and
a
I thought
pure
this is
bloodline.
completely opposite to how I thought of things. Because, I had experience of good people in my life who weren't Christadelphians, and yet there were others who were quite confident that they were going to be saved, who I didn't think measured up at all to some of the other people that I saw. So, I thought that there were some problems of attitudes, little Christadelphianisms that
Yes,
were
I
carried
agree.
through.
I think the ideas that I'm seeing with the Christadelphians is that it doesn't come down to being a good person morally. It comes down to being an obedient person. And so you don't have to be a good person to be an obedient person. And if you're obedient, you can get into the kingdom. If you agree to the doctrine, you can get into the kingdom.
Yes.
If you show up on Sunday often enough, you can get to the
Yes,
kingdom.
that's right.
The bar is completely different. Whereas it's interesting how your mother was illustrating a different example of trying to be a good person, of trying to treat people well, to think of others, to make the world better because you're in it, to not be able to save everyone, to be able to help a few people around you, and still making a difference, even if it was a small thing.
That's right. And it was not even I don't want to be negative all the time. Obviously, there are many, many positives. There are many people that were like diamonds and who I loved. And
there's plenty of good people. Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. But as an organization, there were problems. If you disagreed with a single word in the Birmingham Amended Statement of Faith, that would be enough to get you disfellowshipped in many ecclesias.
And if you're disfellowshipped, there goes your chance at the kingdom.
That's right. And you're cut off from some of your connection with your family and your friends. And as I talked to others, I became aware that there were a lot of these splits and breaks, and people who had done tremendous work for Christadelphia. Like there was a brother who had helped conscientious objection cases in World War II and had done fantastic work and was a great scholar. But because he had a slightly different view of the atonement, he was disfellowshipped. The people that thought it was unfair, that he was disfellowshipped, were disfellowshipped, that sort of thing.
If you disagree with us, you're also out.
So this started me researching, and actually I met this brother later and his lovely wife. And his wife was talking about how the young people of the Shield ecclesias in Sydney, she admired for their love, and the young people of the Logos ecclesias, she admired for their studiousness, and she wished that she could combine them all together. And I thought it was a great tragedy that families and friendships and ecclesias had been split over what outsiders would think were tiny little issues, or things they couldn't even understand.
Absolutely. So, that demand for conformity can really show up in these sort of tragic ways for their own organization, just like the self-harming habit that they can't seem to break, where they insist that everyone has to conform to the exact beliefs that they require, and then they can't reconcile any differences once they establish what the differences are. I also find it interesting that you started to now bring up the Shield versus Logos. So you started at the Logos ecclesia. So when did you start to become aware of the Shield ecclesias?
Well, we had a few people from Shield ecclesias came to the Bible school, Rathmines, and some came to some of the young people's Bible classes. And at this particular young people's class, one of the speakers said that we, meaning the majority who came from Logos ecclesias, shouldn't visit the Shield ecclesias because that would be like a Judahite visiting the northern kingdom in the time when they had their apostasy. And I was absolutely furious with this because I knew people from the Shield ecclesias, and I I thought it was insulting to some of them were even sitting in the
Mm-hmm.
audience.
Yeah, listening to this, being talked about that way, right to their face.
Yeah, so I deliberately visited some, and
I like it.
Yeah,
that was a small pushback. You're like, no, I'm
yes,
still going to
that's
go.
right.
I disagree
That's
with
right.
you. Even though you're at the platform, you've got the power and the name and the like pedigree, like this lineage probably of being a Christadelphian.
That's right. That's also something that sort of got my goat was that one brother pointed out to me that there was developing in Australia an aristocracy in the truth, as he called it. Certain families that have been in Christadelphia for generations were being treated and seemed to consider themselves as somehow the natural leaders, natural bosses, somehow better than others. And with marriage alliances and giving special.
Sounds so ancient.
Yeah, that's right. It's like
royalty,
the Roman Senate or something. But so it made me more aware of what was going on, little circles of influence and privilege.
It's true.
And it was going on.
I think that was all over. It wasn't just Australia for sure. But I think with such a small community, they're kind of able to do that. You're able to get more recognition. You're able to, if you have a few charismatic people in your family who are willing to travel, you can get a lot of influence if you're willing to go on the circuit and people are really enjoying your talks.
That's right. And I overheard some conversations on telephone. A very famous speaker was speaking to people who in different countries, South Africa, America, Britain, who were organizing Bible schools and special weekends. And he was trying to get certain brothers who were being considered to not be invited to speak. And to have other people who he knew to be invited instead, you see.
Wow.
And
I never heard about that kind of politics behind the scenes where certain people were able to set the whole stack of cards there.
Yes. If they had written an article or a book looking at, let's say, Old Testament prophecies a different way than John Thomas or Robert Roberts had interpreted particular passages, or if they wrote a book on the temple of Ezekiel's prophecy was a different shape or design, some difference with Henry Sully's book, or if they had a different emphasis on the atonement in some particular way, or they wouldn't agree about Russia's role
so these are all the reasons people would be potentially taken off the list of we don't want them to speak.
That's right. And the group that I mixed with used to call, I don't know if you know Harry Whittaker. Do you know Harry Whittaker?
I've heard he's
speaker?
Also a name that has come on a few times. I didn't know him, but I know he wrote a book that became a little controversial with some of his different ideas.
Well, they called him Harry-tick. Like heretic.
Yeah,
and,
instead of just Harry Whittaker, heretic.
Right. Yeah.
So they bullied him.
Yeah, and they're actively trying to undermine where he could speak. So that sort of thing. I became aware of things that I thought were wrong.
Can I ask you a follow-up question to one of your comments? You had talked about potentially people who disagreed with the Henry Sully version of Ezekiel's temple being kind of put down. Do you have any more information to share about that from what you remember, if that was something that sticks out to you?
I looked into it myself and I found that every commentary that wasn't a Christadelphian one had a totally different view of the shape of Ezekiel's temple. And
that's what I've heard.
Pretty much agreed with what this other brother's book was trying to point out. And, back up with evidence and scholarship and that sort of thing.
Okay, so someone was trying to debunk the Christadelphian view that Henry Sully set up. Okay.
That's correct. And but in what they termed a more biblical way, like Harry Whittaker in some of his books examined some of the interpretations made 150 years ago and found that it was not supported by the Hebrew or the Greek or that sort of thing. And
absolutely, I
was going to college at that time, and we were being taught about critical thinking and following the evidence and not being swayed by opinion and gut feeling and emotion.
Yeah, especially
that sort of
something
thing.
you already believed, being willing to see and re-examine the evidence.
That's right. So I could see just a lot of following tradition for tradition's sake, and a slavish servitude to the ideology of the pioneers. Just like in Russia, they have Karl Marx, Frederick Engels, and Lenin out there as people who cannot be disagreed with. In Soviet Russia, they had someone who couldn't be disagreed with, and you were punished if you had a different view. And so this stifling of inquiry was wrong. I was spending my little money that I had on Bible commentaries, and I kept finding things that were based on the Hebrew, based on the Greek, by experts who could speak Greek and Hebrew, and it disagreed with interpretations that were coming off the top of the head of speakers.
Yeah.
So, people speaking, it means this, when I knew that the Greek didn't mean that.
Because you have more context there. You can have people who are talking about the language, who are talking about the history, of more of like the biblical studies approach of trying to really examine it to see what it means, who aren't tied to a theology. Whereas Christadelphians start with the theology, and then they look to the Bible to make an exhortation that kind of supports that. It seems like it's almost backwards.
So you had speakers who were saying, oh, Armageddon means, it comes from Armageddon, a heap of sheaves in the valley for judgment. You hear that over and over again. But when you turn to Hebrew scholars, not a single one says that that's the meaning. Everyone identifies, and Greek scholars, everyone identifies it with the hill of Ha Megiddo, and shows the reasons why, and that sort of thing. And other things too. So Robert Roberts would write that when Jesus said, touch me not, for I've not ascended to my Father, that means that the human flesh was so sinful, it would prevent God from changing Jesus's body into an immortal body after he rose, you see. So this is an interpretation that was, well, this is fact, this is what it means. But
because Robert Roberts said it, I mean, how can you disagree with that?
He's Robert Roberts. But when you turn to the Greek scholars, you see it doesn't mean that at all. It means don't cling to me as if I'm never going to leave because I'm about to ascend. So a completely different meaning.
And it makes more sense. Yeah. Which is the other interesting thing.
Or we had another brother who gave an exhort on the woman taken in adultery. And the first remarks he made was, scholars say that this passage wasn't in the original, but who cares? And then he immediately based his whole exhort on the meaning you can gather from that passage, which he'd already said, the scholar said, which is quite correct, is not in all the early manuscripts, so it shouldn't be used. But I was finding this off the top of the head pontificating without really researching it very, very annoying.
That's pretty fair. Yeah. I think we've all seen that, and I think we become more aware of it the longer we're in the meetings. And some more than others, some do try to really research, but as you pointed out, some of those people who do really research end up getting punished and discouraged from being heard. So the culture itself of most ecclesias will push towards hearing the same thing and repeating the same ideas and not actually fact-checking it if that could potentially disagree with the established doctrine.
Well, there's quite a few unusual things that Christadelphians were doing or believing. So I met quite a few Christos that had funny views about health, mythologies. Like some of them believed in iridology, that the shapes in your iris were directly connected to organs of your body, and you could tell what needed extra vitamins or something by looking into your eyes. And then in the ecclesias some of the ecclesias I visited, there were old people who were getting apricot kernels and smashing them up to eat, because they said the natural arsenic in the kernels would kill cancer cells.
Oh, well.
That's what they said.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that. That's
then
my.
another one had believed that there were toxins in the internal tract, and that you had to eat this stuff that would cause all the stuff in your internal tract to be expelled.
That's a cycle that keeps popping up. There's wellness trends where they always come up with some new toxin. You supposedly have some new thing you have to buy to purify yourself of that. Not usually
and then
good.
Every now and again I would come across racism expressed on the platform or casually in conversation. Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Or casually in conversation, and
I believe
no one was saying that's not very nice, or that's unbiblical, or Jesus wouldn't say that, or anything like that.
About how white was your ecclesia you were attending?
Totally white.
100%.
Totally white. Yes. And the brother who took me through for baptism, right, when a really nice brother from another ecclesia married a sister from the Philippines, he said, he didn't agree with that. He didn't agree with marrying
the
like
interracial
that.
marriage.
That
was very.
Why? Said a brother next to me. He said because the children won't be one thing or the other. And this brother said, yes, but Eurasian children can be very fetching. This sort of gut racism was not rebuked.
Yeah.
Another brother.
He would have been racist against the children, is what he's saying. He's like, I don't want to have to hate children. Don't make me.
In his heart and in his conversation with others, not face to face with the other person. But
of course.
There is a brother who even today is saying the same things that he said 40 years ago, that the next pope, and there's been several popes, the next pope is going to be black.
Yeah, I can link that. That is still publicly available, that man saying that.
Because
that's
Nimrod was black. And he says, and so therefore the evil next pope will be black, when implying that's another expression of evil, isn't it? We had a Bible mission night at our ecclesia.
Okay.
And the brothers and sisters are talking about their mission to the Fijians. Now, the Fijians are Melanesian.
Okay.
Obviously dark-skinned. And
not white.
An AB of our meeting stood up and said, yes, but we want to know, can they understand as much of the truth as we can? Meaning, obviously, the white people in the ecclesia. Right?
Yeah.
Because they had, you want to be assured that it wasn't dumbed down. In other words, he didn't say that, but that's his meaning.
Yeah, he's trying to say that they're not intelligent.
Dumbed down for
they're
these
not
native people in their villages and that sort of thing.
Yep. Oh, that's racist. All right. Racism 101.
Yeah. So also, my mother's English, but she doesn't worship the British royal family. But there were plenty of brothers and sisters in Australia who were talking so lovingly about Queen Elizabeth, how she was going to be the antitypical Queen of Sheba. Oh, the Queen of Sheba.
That was the title she had. Right. Yeah,
and I knew that
I heard that
been
too,
said of Queen Victoria, that she would lay her crown at the feet of Jesus. Right. But also, not just the royal family and Queen Elizabeth. I know I've got nothing against, Queen Elizabeth, but I don't worship her as a divinely ordained monarch. But also the way they spoke about the British Empire, as if it still existed, the British Empire, and how Australia was one of the young lions, and Canada was one of the young lions, and even the United States is a sort of like a not so obedient
I think you're
young
pushing
lion.
it. That's a pretty bold stance.
That's right. But they were very nostalgic about Anglo-ism.
Basically the John Thomas era too. It's all very white and it's all very like Victorian.
Yes. And then a brother at my ecclesia gave a talk and he said, it says, all nations shall be gathered before me, and I'll divide them into the sheep and the goats. He said, that means there are going to be sheep nations, which is the Anglo-Saxon countries that God is
see where they're going.
And the goat nations, which is all those other countries which will be not as blessed as the Anglo countries.
Not as white.
Not as white, of course.
Yeah.
So this really got to me because you could see all these unexamined prejudices of the past that have been carried into
and that they're forcing into the doctrines, where they're like, that's definitely what this says. The Bible says we can be racist.
That's
okay,
right.
Grandma.
So I came from a very non-racist family in which my parents talked about Aborigines they knew, Australian Aborigines they knew, or admired black singers like Paul Robeson and black actors like Harry Belafonte, whatever. And they gave me an insight into the disadvantage that different groups had.
They taught you empathy and history. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a different view, and I couldn't understand how this, which I thought was a more enlightened, progressive view, was not part of the gospel mentality of the some of the, or many of the people that I mixed with.
Yeah, those are some good points. I'm glad you mentioned those.
Oh yeah, another thing was
keep on going.
It kept on coming up again and again was plagiarism. Now I became aware because I had to for talks, I studied the life and works of John Thomas, and for another talk, I studied the life and works of Robert Roberts. And I found things I did not like about both of them. That were sort of not mentioned or ignored.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of them was plagiarism. I found that there were slabs of material that John Thomas said was original work of his that had been copied word for word in some cases, just with the slight changes. So many of his doctrines and the way he expressed them were identical to Elias Smith, who had produced a number of pamphlets for his followers who became Campbellites in Philadelphia. So it's obvious that they had kept some of these pamphlets and he had been using them. Yeah. And then there was Eliot, who'd written a commentary on Revelation, and there were huge slabs of that were copied. And then there was Granville Penn, who'd written about Russia and Armageddon and Ezekiel 38, and huge slabs of that were copied for Anatolia and Elpis Israel, but without any acknowledgement.
That's where it becomes plagiarism, because he sold it to make his own profit under his own name without any credit or permissions.
No credit. Now, as a student, I was writing, and you had to always acknowledge where you got your information from. Otherwise, you would be failed for plagiarism. So plagiarism was very, very big. And
they teach you that in school.
Because I was reading some things that were not Christadelphian, I started to notice that some of the brothers were giving whole slabs of lecture or even exposition that they had taken from other works, and they were not mentioning that these thoughts were from this other person.
Oh, so there's even a culture of plagiarism.
Right. And a brother pointed out to me, he showed me, he opened his copy of the Speaker's Commentary, and he opened H.P. Mansfield's Expositors, and he showed me column after column that had been copied word for word from the Speaker's Commentary or some other commentary that he had. There was no acknowledgement at all that this had come from that person. It was being presented, of course, you got a reputation. Oh, you know so much. You're such a great writer. You've got such a great speaker. And there's no acknowledgement.
He took the credit, It's like, hell yeah, I'm great. I'm the best.
I mean, not everything, of course, but huge amounts.
Significant amounts.
That's dishonest. So these little things, they were all adding up. I put them on the shelf for it, but they were all adding up.
It's also kind of funny because I feel like you can only get away with that in such a closed community. If other people were actually reading all of these other commentaries and independently doing their own research, they would probably realize that more often, and there might be more people speaking out, pointing it out. But because the culture rewards people kind of only listening to Christadelphians, agreeing with the Christadelphian doctrines, repeating the Christadelphian doctrines and lines, they don't often, very few people veer out of that. And if anything, that's discouraged to read like non-Christadelphian approved literature. It could be dangerous to your faith. And so I feel like it's they think they can get away with it too, because like, who's going to fact check us? No one else is reading this stuff except us, who are like rebranding it and selling it back to this audience.
And it even extended to hymns because several people in the Logos
Oh yeah,
ecclesia
all the
were
hymns
saying,
are these from other churches.
yeah, but they said, oh, we shouldn't put the name of the author of the words or the
music.
person who wrote the music on the hymns because that is sacrificing to idols.
Oh, like
if we do
worshiping
that.
other
Yeah.
people.
We're acknowledging other people who aren't
That's a
Christadelphian, so
citation.
it's wrong.
That's just citing your source, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
right.
not worshiping. You're worshiping God, supposedly.
That's right.
I want to hear more about your baptism, as you said, when you were around 16. So what led up to you choosing to get baptized, and what was that process like for you, especially as someone who was coming in from the outside? So I imagine there was probably people who had more opinions about how to get you ready for baptism.
Yes, well, I was baptized not to become a Christadelphian, but to become a disciple of Jesus. That was my thinking.
Okay.
But I thought that the only way to be a disciple of Jesus was to be a Christadelphian, because all the other options had been shut off for me. Everyone else was criticized. Every other denomination was put down. And I thought that, well, this is the way I'll become part of this community, and in order to develop to be like Jesus. And I had the instruction. And when I was being instructed, though, there was a few areas which I didn't agree with, but I felt I could not discuss because then that would delay me going through to baptism.
Because they'd have to correct you, obviously. You have to conform before you can proceed to the next level.
Yeah. One of them was that God has a body. So the person taking me through was saying, God has a human-looking body like a man. He's got a head, eyes, mouth, nose, arms and legs. And, of course, it's part of Christadelphian doctrine, but I found out later not every Christadelphian believes this.
Yeah, I don't remember that being hardcore where I was.
No. So he said to me, it says in Isaiah, my right arm brought salvation to me. See, that proves...
wow, God clearly has a whole body, because he
got a right arm,
mentions an arm.
He must have a left arm.
That's never been a metaphor, ever.
Exactly. And I thought to myself, and I was only 16, but I thought, well, you could just as easily say God looks like a fire-breathing dragon, because there's a passage that says under
Dragons
the shelter of his
arms.
wings, and another passage that says the smoke from his nostrils. Right?
So God's a dragon. Holy crap, this is brilliant.
But I felt I couldn't enter into this discussion. I just sort of left that behind. There were a few other things that left behind. But I wanted to be baptized. So when I was 16, we had about a 2-hour interview in which there were two brothers asking me questions, and then I would give the memorized verse. We'd turn to it and that sort of thing. And my mother and my brother came to it, which I was pleased
like
with.
Mine.
Yeah, that's right. And I wore my first suit and tie after I was baptized. But my older brother was not very impressed, because all the time afterwards, there were brothers trying to interest him in all the war movements that were happening, and how excited they were feeling about there was going to be a war in the Middle East soon, and movement of Russia and that sort of thing, which disgusted my brother.
They're still excited about that.
They'll go on and on. It's his favourite topic. But my brother, quite rightly, was disgusted about this emphasis and interest in death, killing, blowing up, invasions, armies,
violence.
That sort of thing. Oh,
yeah.
And there were aspects of people's insensitivity that I grew to see more and more. For instance, and this is more common in Adelaide, you would be in the city, let's say in a car, and a young brother would look up at a skyscraper and say, won't that be a terrific sight when it comes down during the earthquake?
Oh, because I've heard that, yeah.
They've been told that there's a massive earthquake. Every tall building, or almost every will come crashing down. And I thought,
so much death.
You are not concerned about the men, the women, the babies, the children who are actually in these buildings or underneath these buildings when they come crashing. It doesn't matter to you.
No, they do not care.
And I was in a car with another brother from my ecclesia, and he started laughing about this woman in his area who had been killed by a car in front of her
Oh,
family. I
oh,
could not believe it. He
oh,
was laughing away, as no concern for her as well. It's just
oh,
how funny that it should happen right in front of me. And I was so disgusted.
sociopath.
I could not look at
Wow.
him for the rest of the car trip. And
Whoa, that's
these sort of things.
awful.
I know that Mormons have this expression. Ex-Mormons have this expression of having a shelf, and they put it on the shelf. You know, they won't think about it now, and they keep putting things on the shelf until there's
Mm-hmm.
so much weight on there that it collapses. And they say things
Yeah.
like, "Oh, my shelf collapsed with this," and I felt I was doing. I was putting it on the shelf like that. And then
Mm-hmm.
one Bible school, I was talking to this beautiful lovely sister in a wheelchair
Mm-hmm.
from St. John's, I think that's in Nova Scotia, a
Oh yeah.
Canadian
Okay.
sister. And she said that whenever she gets to the passages where um, women and children are killed, let's say the Canaanites or Amalekites, whatever, she has to close her mind and not think about it because she can't think about it. She goes on to
Yeah,
that
she's
another
empathetic.
passage.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this is what I've been doing. And if a belief is factual, then it should be faceable. We should be able to
Mm-hmm.
say, this is what I believe because of this,
Mm-hmm.
and I approve it. If it's not something I can face, then there's something wrong with my
Yeah.
reasoning or something wrong with the argument. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started taking note of these other things, that I was putting in the back of my mind. I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking about this, but I don't want to think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
why is it? Why is it? I'm trying to analyze what it is and what the pattern was behind all these things that worried me, instead of
Mm-hmm.
just ignoring it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. I mean, we've already had a number of things come up that you were starting to see and that you
Mm.
noticed. And it didn't deter you right away, each one individually, but I can see they're starting to pile up a number of
Mm.
little things with the culture, with the doctrines, with the behavior, with the way they looked at and treated outsiders, all of that. Okay, so you did get baptized. Did your involvement with the ecclesia change after that? Did you face any barriers and, you know, feeling even more of it like an outsider after that compared to some of the other young brothers? I'm curious to hear about that.
No, actually, because they wanted to encourage me, as they did with the other young brothers, to speak. And
Okay.
I quite enjoyed it. I love putting together exhortations, lectures,
Mm-hmm.
parts of Bible classes, but I put a lot of effort into it. I probably put too much effort into it, hours and hours getting the materials together and the overheads and whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed passing on knowledge, and especially when I could use some of the scholarship that I had. I purchased books and that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and was able to bring out some fantastically interesting stuff, I thought, to do with the social environment and the context
Mm-hmm.
of the time
Mm-hmm.
and what people felt. And so I did a lot of Bible marking
Okay.
and took a lot of notes. The environment that I was in Logos Ecclesia, there was amongst certain of the brothers, a lot of note taking and writing up and
Yeah,
studiousness.
there's a very studious nature to it. You got your Bible
Mm,
case with a little notebook in there, maybe your
yeah,
Bible marking pens, all your
that's
little
right.
goodies.
Uh, but I enjoyed it. As I said, I enjoyed going to the studies and being enthused by things. And that's one of the sad things about having to leave Christadelphia. I mean, obviously the freedom's much greater, but
Mm-hmm.
there were some enjoyable activities we did.
Yeah, for some of the nerdy people, it was kind of fun to go to public lectures. So, I mean, I'd still go to
Yeah,
those sorts of things at like the library or whatever, like go to
yeah.
museums, but it's not
Mm,
the same where you don't see the same people. So there's a community of people who were learning
mm,
something together. So that is kind of a
yes.
cool thing. It's more like when I was in college and you had a lot of classes with the same people and you're learning the
Mm,
same things and could kind of discuss it. But as an adult, you don't get as much of that for sure. So that is one interesting and unique aspect of the community for sure.
Oh, yeah. So I spoke at my ecclesia, and I did a little bit at study weekends and led groups and that sort of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
then I was just in the year before I left, I was just beginning to speak at some of the ecclesias outside my home ecclesia,
Okay.
which was very good because I was a bit on the young side for the brothers that they normally invited to
Mm-hmm.
give an exhort or a lecture.
Okay. So that's actually pretty good. You're actually the opposite of what I expected. It sounds like you were welcomed and encouraged and given a
Mm,
platform to speak at numerous levels. Because I feel like it's kind of like a soft lunch if you did like a weekday Bible class. And it sounds like that would have really been a great fit for you with your interest in like
mm,
commentaries and more of like a casual, curious chat. Usually those tend to be more of like deep dives, I feel like, whereas the
mm,
exhortation's a little more focused on Jesus and like doctrine,
mm,
and kind of an appeal to everyone who's there for the Sunday. Um, Whereas I feel like after Bible class, I would see a lot more people have like discussions and like really
mm,
chat about it. But that's nice to hear, especially as someone who was, I think Brian called it the miscellaneous group, who wasn't from a family with a big name. You weren't part of like any group who would really intentionally give you a leg up in that social ladder. You kind of had to earn it. But it sounds like it was kind of a natural fit for a while for you. So
yes, yes,
you were given the opportunity.
that's
So that's
right.
kind of
And
nice.
I got to know some of the very, very prominent brothers
Mm-hmm.
in Sydney and in Adelaide, and I think that they got to like me. And as I said, I had lots of people who I loved and who loved me. I
That's
think.
good. Yeah. So I'm curious for your perspective here as well. I've started asking more people about what kind of control they felt it had over their life. How did being a member of the Christadelphians impact the choices you were making or what you felt free to do or not do during your time in the group?
Well, for controls, restrictions on me were all voluntary,
Mm-hmm.
but with an eye on social conventions and expectations. So no one forced me to do anything, but
Yeah, because your parents
I,
weren't
that's
Christadelphian,
right.
so they weren't
That's right.
pushing that on you.
That's correct. In fact, my mother came into my bedroom once and said if I didn't stop studying, she was going to take my books and burn them. So I thought,
She sounds
oh,
a lot like
and
Robert Roberts' mom, actually. Yeah.
yes, yeah,
But she did love you, clearly.
yes, that's right, very much. So I did some sacrificing for being a Christadelphian. So I had my original career plans when I was a young teenager was to be an archaeologist or an historian,
Oh, that's
but
cool. I could see that being a
you
good fit for you, honestly, with the historian
yeah,
side.
but unfortunately you can't get very
Uh-oh.
far in your career if you have to say are forced to say that the human history is only 6,000 years old.
Yeah, that's a troublesome one. You're going to fail some tests with that one.
And in my area, Christadelphian
Mm-hmm.
ecclesia, like most Christadelphian ecclesias, you had to say not only that human history was 6,000 years old, but the whole earth was created 6,000 years ago, and the stars and the moon and the sun, that sort of thing. Ridiculous, absolutely. And that's something that I could not mentally agree with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but as for a career, I could not be an archaeologist
Yeah, some
digging
careers just
and
don't
so
lend
on.
themselves to it.
That's
Yeah, I
right.
had a hard
That's
time
right.
because I had an interest in the sciences as well. And again, it was
Mm,
the same thing with the creationism, evolution
mm.
drama, all that stuff that there is.
Yes. But and I read a book when I was a young brother that it was a non-Christadelphian book, but it very beautifully tried to align the Bible with the idea of the world being millions of years old and there being evolution, that sort of thing. I thought the
Okay.
arguments were very strong, but I could not say anything. I could not
Mm-hmm. That
open my
wasn't still
mouth.
good enough. Yeah, even though it was biblical, it wasn't Christadelphian. That's the
It's not
problem.
was not the accepted view. Not only
Yeah.
was it not the accepted view, but I was aware that many of the ecclesias that I went to had extra doctrines to be rejected
I
added
have
on to
heard that.
the
Yeah.
Birmingham Ministry. one ecclesia that I went to quite frequently had about 6 or 7 more things added. One of them is that the world is more than 6,000 years old. You had to reject that there was any changes in species through evolution.
Okay, so no evolution.
That's
I
right.
get that. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you had to reject that the interpretation of Revelation was not the continuous historical interpretation set out by John Thomas. So
we love John Thomas and the Christadelphians. They really do.
Just fellowshipping anyone who had a different interpretation of it, absolutely, as I thought, ridiculous and over the top. So I wasn't going to raise any sort of questioning.
You saw the writing on the wall. You said something.
Right.
You saw how they handled that.
And then there was my emotional life. I was sacrificing, which they had no idea about, but I did, because I am same-sex attracted. And I never did anything to follow that. While I was a Christadelphian, I never had a romance or any physical
at all.
action. With a female as well as with a male, except I kissed a sister for a few weeks. We were boyfriend and girlfriend for a couple of weeks, but there was a lot of struggle from the point of view of stress. What would God think of this at the judgment seat? What would any brother or sister think of me if they knew that I had some attraction? When there was a sister who showed interest in me, I thought, well, if I marry her and something happens in the marriage, a divorce or whatever, she won't be able to remarry, because you couldn't remarry without consequences.
You're kind of sealing her life to you forever.
That's right. And so for that reason, I would not allow anything to get beyond the general pleasantries of interaction. So from that point of view, I was getting a bit depressed and a bit lonely. For that reason. And I thought I was making a sacrifice. But in order to make this sacrifice, it's got to be worth it. You've got to be sacrificing for some ideals that you totally agree with and you're willing to give away your emotional life for. And over time, this conviction about Christadelphia eroded. And so I was becoming more and more concerned that my life was slipping away. I thought I was only 22 at the time.
You were still kind of a baby, but
that's right. You can't see the years ahead of you. And then I was sacrificing also my free speech, because I wanted to talk about these things, but I couldn't. And I thought, this is dishonest, me not talking about it. I wasn't lying. I wasn't saying I believe things that I didn't believe. Thank goodness I was never asked to give a lecture on Ezekiel 38, because through my research I found that it was not as was presented, that Russia wasn't Rosh, that Germany wasn't Magog, that these are all little nations in Turkey, that sort of thing. But could I say it? No.
I'm also curious, what did you hear growing up that you remember about like LGBTQ issues? Because it seems like you picked up early on that it wasn't allowed. And also, around what age did you realize that you weren't really interested in women?
Well, straight away, you would hear stories. I mean, we began Sunday school in the time of the Northern Kingdom and Judah, and you had lots of talking about immorality and that sort of thing, and the world outside, they're all evil, and comparatively, and we were supposed to be the good people, and I started to realize that I was same-sex attracted at about 17, so I was already a brother.
So you just really gotten in there after your baptism and all that when you realized, because that's around the time. That makes sense.
That's right. Couldn't escape. And I was hoping that with my praying and my reading and my study, whatever, any attraction in that area would continue to be suppressed and might go away eventually.
Or just go away.
Yeah, and there were young sisters who seemed to like me, and I thought, well, see what might develop here. Who knows what could develop here? But as I said, I came to realise, no, these attractions were still there. As I said, I didn't do anything to follow them. But nothing was changing there. But actually, there was a catalyst associated with that in leaving. It wasn't the main reason, but it was a catalyst to do with that. And that was a brother in my ecclesia was giving a public lecture, and he was walking to and fro on the platform, very, very animated, and pouring out torrents of abuse against gay people, saying they were dogs returning to their vomit and they were going to be absolutely destroyed. And it brought up a memory that I'd suppressed of another brother in Adelaide who had said one of the things he looked forward to most in Jesus returning and him entering the kingdom was the ability to kill all those homosexuals. He would line them up and kill them all. And he was really gleeful about it. And as I said, my stomach turned because I
understandably
knew that if I'm in the audience, there are other young people in the audience and older ones with some same-sex attraction or with a lot of same-sex attraction. What are they going to think about this? That there's no hope for them, that everything will be discovered about what they feel in their heart. And that
Jesus knows everything. Then, he'll judge you.
Of course, there were some suicides. And after I left, I heard about more suicides.
Really?
Now, I don't know the reasons why young people suicide in Christadelphia, but I can't help thinking that this attitude towards LGBTQ IA+ people and other minorities is part of the problem.
Yeah, was it a lot more of like the younger people that it was happening to that you remember with these suicides at that time?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Young people and young brothers. As I said, I don't know what their reasons were, but it was on my mind.
No one would ever talk about it, I'm sure, or they wouldn't say the real reason. Because I'm sure when I left, they were probably like, well, she left because she's just evil and wanted to enjoy her sinful life. They wouldn't be like, oh, like we're actually going to ask her and repeat the accurate, reasons that she shares. There's also their spin on things.
There's no empathy. There's no sympathy. There's no, from my experience, obviously my experience is not the whole of Christadelphia, but from my experience, there was no empathy, sympathy. There was no view that people might be struggling.
You would think after numerous suicides, someone would say, hey, maybe we should consider what's going on to save the people we love, to save our young people, to save our families, to save people that were supposedly chosen by God to be in the kingdom. You would think.
I remember one AB from a different ecclesia, he was saying, a couple had come in and they had remarried and they'd become
so they're both obviously evil, right? Yeah.
And the ABs gave them the advice that yes, they could continue living together, but just don't have sexual relations
ever for the rest of your life.
And what happened was the brother became an alcoholic and the wife committed suicide. And so this AB said, we won't be giving that advice in future. And I thought, why didn't they think about the possible consequences before giving the advice? They didn't think about
how people would be impacted by what they're saying. That is precisely the problem. Yes.
Yeah. But, we talked about a little bit about me leaving, and I must say that there are, other things that were bigger issues. That was sort of like a catalyst thing because of what I said to a brother afterwards. But leading up to it, I was reading a lot about evolution because we're doing biology and the human frame in my course as a speech pathologist, and we had to deal with a lot of cadavers. I had the job of taking the body parts out of the the various tanks, and we were
You learned that in
sticking the pins.
speech pathology?
Oh,
Holy
yes,
crap.
every
I didn't
body
realize it was
system.
that intense.
Yes, every body system.
Wow.
Digestive
Okay. Didn't know
system,
that.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Holy crap.
so in order to study it, you had to study its history and its development.
Okay.
And the evidence for evolution was absolutely overwhelming. And again, I couldn't say that I thought it was. And I couldn't say that I thought it was wrong that there were ancestors being disfellowshipped because they said they thought evolution was part of God's method.
Mm-hmm.
As well as that, I was reading a lot of commentaries to get the nuggets of information, and many of them had high criticism in it, and they're able to show me all the evidences for the book of Daniel being written during the time of the Maccabees, not by Prophet Daniel.
Yeah.
Some of the epistles being forgeries, like First and Second Timothy and Titus and Second Peter and Ephesians and all that sort of thing.
Not written by Paul.
Not written by Paul. The strong evidence for it. Couldn't actually prove it, but it was pretty strong.
It's pretty interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and all this was sort of cracking the wall of doubts that I had. And so anyway, this lecture happened, and I said to one of the arranging brothers, I want to speak to you. And so we went home in his car, and I said I was unhappy about the relative lack of empathy and sympathy for people who were not in the same position as Christadelphians. So obviously...
most of the world throughout history.
Most of the world, that's right.
Yes.
And that included this lecture tonight where there's no empathy at all for people who might have same-sex attraction. And he wanted to know, why do you feel this? Why? So I actually said, well, because I have same-sex attraction and I have not done anything about it. And it's very disheartening to hear the way that it is expressed. And he just slumped down in his chair, shocked. And he said, well, I've got to speak to the other ABs about this. I said,
of course.
Wait.
Didn't give a shit about you.
I've told you this in confidence, thinking we're talking one-on-one.
Oh, no. He immediately has to report back to headquarters.
If you tell the ABs, what will my life be like, What will happen to
out
me?
In the meeting. Yeah.
So I said, he said he wouldn't. Anyway, so 2 weeks later, I'm driving back with his real brother in the car from the Bible class. It'd been about the tabernacle. And I happened to say, just as we were getting close to my house, of course, now that Jesus is not here with his miracles, there's no such thing as a sin against the Holy Spirit, because you can't see spirit miracles and then speak against them. So as a brother said once in exhort, there's now no such thing as an unforgivable sin. And as he shook my hand, he grabbed hold of it. And he stared into my eyes very intensely, and he said, well, I think there is an unforgivable sin. I think if a brother was even thinking about sodomy, that would be an unforgivable sin.
Holy shit.
And so
that wasn't even what you were talking about.
I don't know what we were talking about. And so it's obvious to me that his brother had told him what I had said in confidence. So if he knew it, who else knew? Had been told amongst the AB. So I just nodded and left the car. But as I was going,
that's why you don't get in a car with a Christadelphian once you leave. I'm sorry, if they're that kind of person, you are not safe. That is traumatizing.
Shaking. And I thought,
very upsetting.
This is the breaking point. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. And so everyone else was asleep in my family. I turned on the light at the desk, and until 4 a.m, from 10 to 4 a.m, I was writing my resignation letter to Cabramatta Ecclesia.
Okay.
And I put in all the reasons, all the things I disagreed with, and the reasons why.
All the things you stayed quiet about.
In a loving way. Yeah, all the things I stayed quiet about in a loving way. And I felt such a relief that I finally had the courage, I thought, to put into words for another Christadelphian things that I thought and felt that they wouldn't agree with. So it was 4 a.m, and I started packing an overnight bag. I took the resignation letter and I walked down to this brother's a number of blocks away house, and I put it on his desk, didn't knock on the door, put it on his desk.
Wow, you just got that done.
And then I ran to a public phone. I called up an acquaintance I knew from college because we just graduated just a couple of months before.
Okay.
And I asked if I could stay at his place. He put me up for a few weeks, and I'm glad I did. I was able to think more clearly without the contact of Christadelphians.
No
they did a lot of ringing up and knocking on the door of my parents' place, but I wasn't there.
Yep.
I was able to think calmly, whatever, relax a bit, and that was how I left. They were shocked, of course.
Did your mom know that about your romantic feelings, about what your sexuality was?
She suspected, I think, because I wasn't bringing any girls home. And it sounds foolish, but I liked listening to opera and that sort of thing. And I was interested
There's just a few little things.
Yeah, little things. She suspected, but she didn't know. But she said that she was okay with gay people, so I knew that she would be okay.
Okay, that's good. Okay. So you weren't afraid about her knowing, so that's good.
My father was a different story.
Well, yeah, the men are tough.
Yeah, but anyway, so I was able to get my head together. I was able to get my first job, get a bit more money in my pocket, and then my best friend from Christadelphia, who lived in Adelaide, distance away from Sydney, she called me up and wanted to talk, and I said, well, look, I'll talk face to face. So he said, sure, come over. So I took the bus all the way from Sydney to Adelaide, and I spent a weekend at he and his wife's home, and he and his parents' home. Was a well-known speaker, and we'd go on for hours, back and forth, and it was good because I remained calm, but every now and again they would break out into this really emotional tirade, against me. But I was happy I was able to remain calm and make sense. And at the end, I thought this was a good experience, even though it was absolutely exhausting, because over 2 days, the brothers that I spoke to were not able to persuade me that I was wrong. Yeah. And I could tell that what I was saying was making an impact, but they would not acknowledge it,
Yeah, or reflect on it. No.
Yeah, or reflect on it. That's right. Right. And eventually turn to, these insults and whatever. But one of the brothers said to me, so you don't agree with a war. What happens when Jesus returns? And I said, well, if I come before Jesus, I'll ask him not to kill anyone, because there are better ways to do that. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they were putting nails into him. So, he's able to forgive and help people. And this didn't go down very well.
No, they love angry. He'll come back as a lion, Jesus. That's who they focus on, even though all the stories are of peaceful, loving Jesus that we were given to model and reflect on.
They said, who are you to have your own opinion about this? And I said, well, I'm withdrawing my approval of some of God's plans. And that really launched a tirade. But
God's all-knowing. God must be right.
But sadly, the brothers who I was speaking to, some of them were mixed up in some major scandals later on. So they had their own problems down the track. But as I said, love them as people, but I disagree with them on their views, and I can see the faults in their reasoning that's sort of like that are features of the system, not just bugs, but are inherent parts of it. Having to dampen down your empathy, for instance.
It shows up in all the different branches of Christadelphians. It may not be in every single individual, but it is common throughout the culture everywhere. Yeah, that's what we see are these commonalities. So we've kind of naturally transitioned into all of your leaving. Was there anything we skipped or missed that you wanted to loop back to from before you left?
Oh, yes. when it comes to culture generally, I mean, they were forcing the young people to like, in inverted commas, classical music. Whereas, because they said, we won't want them to listen to pop songs or anything.
Well, there's always been that controversy of don't listen to rock music, don't listen to pop music, don't listen to music with bad words in it. Like, it was hard for them to agree on what was appropriate music when all they had was hymns, and people wanted to listen to more than hymns.
Only collect stamps from Israel was another one that
that's
I
a
noticed.
Weird one.
Yes, you can collect stamps, but just Israeli stamps.
Oh, that's actually super weird.
Yeah, and they were really keen on any right-wing
They
politics
love Israel
as well. Like,
that's still a thing.
Likud wanted to do something in Israel. Oh, fantastic. And they were speculating about the next bit of land they were going to conquer and that sort of thing. And generally speaking, my set of ecclesias, they like right-wing causes, even though they say, we're not political. Whenever a subject came up that was a right-wing issue,
But they were all somehow on that kind of view.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't vote for it, but I believe it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And in fact, I've been in a loving, wonderful relationship for 33 years with my partner, John, and we got married.
Aww, love it.
Yeah, that's right. And Australia had to have a referendum asking all the population,
everyone,
is this
okay?
Do you think gay people should be allowed to do what you've been able to do, you know, all your life?
Can they have equal rights? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Vote
And the answer was yes, and it was a wonderful moment. And we were in the park with a huge crowd of people crying, and I proposed then, and we got married.
Oh my goodness! Really, you're part of that historic moment.
That's right. But there was a brother who was going around ecclesia saying that even though Christadelphians don't vote, they should vote in the referendum against gay marriage. You see,
they're evil.
So be political for this thing to deny
hypocritical.
Rights.
I'm so
deny rights for people who only want to live a normal life. You know what I mean?
That's so cool. So, they're not Christadelphians, so what the fuck should it matter to you?
Exactly. But
and look at what happens when you talk to people about how to have a happy, healthy marriage. They're literally committing fucking suicide and becoming alcoholics. That's the marriage advice model that they give.
Right.
So they should probably not be in charge of society's marriage and the marriage laws.
Yes. Well, yes. There are people who pretend to be experts in marriage counseling or psychological counseling, hear confessions almost and give psychological advice or whatever.
Don't trust them.
They don't have qualifications.
Don't trust Christadelphians who say that. No.
Yeah. But I like now that because of legislation, Christadelphian ecclesias have brought in policies about child protection and some things to do with domestic violence. They've got, I think it's Care Links. No, not Care Links. It's some other care organisation that people can appeal to. Thank goodness, beyond their ABs, because the history that I heard of goings on in Christadelphia while I was a member, the ABs sort of wanted to quieten things down,
they
protect reputation.
Sweep it under the rug.
Oh, that's right. So even though I didn't see any abuse when I was there,
you weren't supposed to. They're hiding it. No, that's the thing. It goes to the ABs.
I did hear hushed tones talking about the brother who beat his wife, the father who beat his children with planks of wood, the premarital sex, and the rushed baptism in order for a couple to get married so that they could both be baptized and married.
Yeah.
And of course there were divorces and very lonely people sitting in the meetings who felt they couldn't remarry until their partner eventually died of old age.
Which is pretty miserable.
Yeah, there was but again, we're talking about the negatives because these all lead to the leaving. But
yes, they're relevant.
I want to emphasize that there were a lot of good times as well, and some lovely people.
And clearly you had some friends, and there was enough that kept you going for a number of years until it really was not a good fit for you, and across a number of different categories of why it wasn't a good fit.
Yeah, can I say that I became interested in two areas that did influence me in leaving as well.
Okay.
One was the atonement. So I researched the BASF, and every little phrase and word in it that had to do with the atonement. And I researched the history of that word, and I went through 6 or 7 major works by Central Ecclesia
You are really studious.
people, and then others from other, let's say, the Bereans or other
some
groups.
of the other groups. Okay.
Yeah, and I compared what their arguments were, and every time I found that people had built up their view of the atonement based upon ideas that they got from John Thomas and Robert Roberts, as well as from the scriptures, and they had created a structure that they could understand, like a Lego thing. And to them, all the pieces fitted together. But another group would disagree with one aspect of it, or
one of the bricks,
and they said, "Oh, we can't fellowship you because Robert Roberts said this," and they would say, "Yes, but Robert Roberts also said that." Well, John Thomas said this. John Thomas also said that. Everyone had a logical argument. And they would not speak to each other sometimes. They would
cut each other off. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. And the other area was, when I was 17, I was in a play, The Protesters. You might know that book.
Yeah, it was based on the book. I didn't know that they did a play at the Sunday school.
The Australians made a play, and I played Balthazar Hubmaier in it, who eventually gets persecuted for speaking the truth and gets killed. And so this interested me in the Reformation. And as I was reading it, reading what they actually wrote, I was really moved because they had a genuine faith and they were quoting scripture, whatever, and they were right in some arguments, I thought. But many of them actually eventually got burnt at the stake, drowned, killed, whatever. And they were praying for protection, but they didn't get it. And I kept thinking, Christadelphia, a lot of Christadelphians don't appreciate the hard work and death and blood and tears that's gone into having the Bible in English, or no church and state combined, or the emblems are not real blood and body of Christ. All these things that people fought and died for, and they've taken for granted and did not give any respect at all to these people. So, for instance, my best friend was mentioning about how in the 1700s a little Welsh blind girl walked all the way from Wales to London to get hold of a copy of the Bible in Welsh so it could be read to her. And I was immediately dismissed. I was shocked. He said, "I don't want to hear about anything to do with the works of the apostasy." And this was sort of like, to me, this was an insight of not valuing things that I valued, and what values have they got left? It's very, very narrow.
It is.
Where's their interest in art and culture and architecture and plays and novels and whatever? To them, it's a waste of time. Many.
Just read the Bible over and over again.
It's going to be destroyed when the kingdom comes. There'll be, one brother said, I'll enjoy flying around the world, because he imagines himself like a superhero, flying around the world, using my powers to destroy Catholic churches, right? Boom,
he's like an evil Superman.
Cathedral. Yes. Yeah. Boom goes the cathedral. Smash goes the libraries. Wow. And I thought that is.
And they think they're the good guys.
That is really Luddite, isn't it? That's really obscurantism. But thank goodness, I got to actually speak my truth at last. Like that old Negro spiritual, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. And now I am soon after leaving, I became a humanist, an atheist. And I've stayed that way, and I'm glad. But paradoxically, I'm still interested in Bible literature as literature, as working out what the original authors really meant and that sort of thing. And I found that fascinating. And I don't have any of the or the baggage that Christian denominations carry about. They must believe the Trinity, supernatural hell, all that sort of.
It's a little more of a blank slate compared to some of the mainstream churches.
Yeah, I think anyway, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you carry some of those Christadelphian ones, but at the same time, you've already spent so much time unpacking those.
Yeah.
And you weren't raised with them from birth, unlike most of us who we've heard from on the podcast. Wow. So there was a lot going on that caused you to leave and that you noticed was not working for you with the community. And we already kind of went over what it sounds like was the final trigger of you leaving. Was there anything else you wanted to share about the leaving specifically?
Well, after the first year, I didn't contact any Christadelphians, and they didn't contact me.
Well, after they were knocking on your mom's door,
yeah,
because
that's
you
right.
said there was initial response.
Yes, initial. That's right. And basically, I didn't want to meet face to face with my ecclesia much because I wanted to remember them as I remember them, because I didn't want to take away memories of them either crying or getting angry with me or that sort of thing. I wanted to have good memories of them. So, and I think I succeeded in doing that. But about 15 years ago, I decided to see what's happening in Christadelphia. So I started going on some of the websites, and I found that atonement wars had been going on. A lot of disfellowship, disagreements between people who'd been colleagues beforehand and had been treated badly, prevented from speaking, that sort of thing. And there were a lot of marriages breaking up. There were a lot of disfellowships. There were more suicides. But it was interesting, and scandals too, like the editor of the Christadelphian taking monies that should have been used
the embezzling,
for pensions, embezzling, that sort of thing, and really surprising things. So I contacted a few ex-Christadelphians, and we had some meetups. That was really good.
Oh, that's nice.
And of course, I joined the ex-Christadelphian Facebook group, which was good. And I was reading stuff from the ecclesias.com website, which is also very, very good. And I found it very therapeutic because I realized that some of the things I experienced had some effects on me, psychologically, or perhaps in my personality, that I was sort of driving myself too hard because I had this need to prove myself. You know how there's always the idea, but also the idea of
the sinful nature,
work to show yourself approved of God, or work out your salvation with trembling and fear. You know, you got to work. So I was overworking, and I had to also work at relaxing more. And
I did too. I struggled with that.
Living in the moment, you know, mindfulness. I had to, because
that was hard too. I had to learn that.
As a Christadelphian, your mind is half the time in events thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago, and another third of your mind in events in the future.
In the future, the eternal kingdom.
But what about the present?
Doesn't exist.
What about the poor people around?
Don't look
in the
at
present?
it.
So I had to try and appreciate people more and beauty around me more. Force myself to do that, and it came to love doing it. But and I was too judgmental in my mind, so I had to learn to be less judgmental.
That's good.
It did bring me back to my family, but it had caused some distancing. There's a line in the Psalms, I've become a stranger to my mother's children. And that was certainly true for me, because the way I was thinking and talking and acting was completely different to them. So there was a bit of isolation that came from my family, which was able to recover that after leaving. So that was really good as well.
That's good. Yeah. So what else changed after leaving, and how has your life changed since leaving? It's been many years, so whatever stages you want to talk about, feel free to share.
Yeah, well, I've been able to give myself wholly to my career, honestly, with all my heart, and it's all about, as speech pathology, helping people to express themselves, be it babies, infants, children, young people, old people as well, and helping them to talk about the things that they like and value their life. I want them to I can say that I want them to live as they want to live, rather than thinking, oh, it would be good if they became Christadelphian. That sort of that narrow view.
Too bad they have no hope.
Yes. And I've been able to, of course, have relationships, emotional relationships, friendships with people who live differently to me and think differently to me, and I've been able to be on the same level with them and enjoy their company. I immersed myself in all the music that I had missed out on, and many of the films that I had not watched because I was a good young Christadelphian brother. And I do a lot of traveling around the world without worrying about having to go to the meeting, which the meeting was closed, or have some presentations in my bag to give or anything like that.
Yeah, ready to go on Sunday.
Yeah, and really like other cultures and understand how they think without thinking it's a waste of time.
Just being open-minded to absorb it without judgment. Just like, oh, that's interesting. That's different.
Yeah, that's right. And I should actually mention, I didn't mention it before, I thought it was interesting that when John's my partner, were married, we did it in a registry office, the main registry office in Sydney, which is right next door to where Sydney Central Christadelphian Ecclesia used to exist. And so I thought of, while we were getting married, I thought of all the brothers and sisters that used to be next door that would have a fit if they knew what was happening to ex-Christadelphian. So that would have lost that was fun.
Yeah. Even this week, I accidentally drove by a Christadelphian ecclesia, and I was like, oh, there it is. There's one. So funny when you pass them. Cool.
And relatively boring places on the inside.
Yes, and outside sometimes, too.
Yeah, some Greek Orthodox brothers were talking about the shock when they went into a Christadelphian hall to see there were no gold, there. No silver, no icons,
no pictures,
nice paintings and furnishings and and lace and stuff, or candles and lights.
Nope.
Where's
no
the
incense,
interest?
No stained glass. Nothing. It is this incredibly dull room.
And so many of the hymns are taken from Scottish Presbyterianism, which it's focused so much on sin and we're hopeless without God. Very sort of like down tunes as well as words.
Well, Robert Roberts had a strong hand in setting up the hymns originally, and he was from that region, so I think there's probably a reason for that. That's a lot more human and not like, oh, God approves of these hymns. There weren't hymns in them.
On Robert Roberts, I actually went to Aberdeen and I tried to get to his old house.
Okay.
But where it is a very poor area of Aberdeen, warehouses, and there were a lot of drug addicts around, so I couldn't get to the actual spot. But but
you tried.
Yeah, I tried. Yes. I went to his grave though. I've been to John Thomas and Robert Roberts'
I've been there too. Yeah, I can't believe you made it all the way over here. That's only like an hour and a half from where I live.
Yes. Took an Uber there and found it pretty easily.
Yeah, if you just go away and go to the left, it's not too far in.
That's right. And I thought, wouldn't JT be surprised to have sleeping next to him and his wife?
Yeah, it was very odd that it wasn't just him and his family, his wife and daughter there. And Robert Roberts just got tossed in.
One speaker I know showed me in his study a piece of branch. He's Australian. A piece of branch. You're not supposed to bring in any something from overseas.
I've heard this.
And he put it in his study above his desk. A piece of the branch that was from the tree near the graves. And I was itching to say, but I didn't, that's how the cult of the saints started, isn't it? Taking things and putting things on the grave of the saints.
That also sounds like idolatry.
Yes, he wouldn't have appreciated it.
Also, it's an arboretum. Please don't do that. They really care about the trees. Like, they do tours
Yes,
of the trees there. It's a beautiful place. It's like a park. Please don't do that.
that's right. That's right.
So, are there any positives that about your life that you attribute to that time of being a
Yes,
Christadelphian?
I take away my ability to speak to people of all ages now, which I had to learn that ability, and
Okay.
I have kept it. I really enjoyed that part, and getting into conversations with people, finding out stuff about them, and realizing that you can love people that aren't your relatives because of
Yeah.
their character and that sort of thing. And I had some very serious friendships there that couldn't last because I was told, "Oh, we can't be your friend because friendship with the world is enmity with God." So obviously you can't.
Mm.
Because I
Oof.
said, "Well, at least you're my friend," and
And then
they
they're
said
like,
no.
no. So
But
you didn't keep any friends from that were Christadelphians?
no.
Yeah.
But I
Okay.
ended up with a few ex-Christadelphians who I knew,
Nice.
and
Okay.
I'm friendly with them. And
Yeah.
I took away as well the beauty of Greek word concepts, because I did a
Okay,
lot of
that early
studying there,
interest
and
in that.
I've
Yeah.
kept that. That's right, and
Okay.
also some aspects of Hebrew poetry, the imagery there, and
Okay.
stuff like that, and
Some appreciation for that.
yeah. So I took that, and one of my hobbies is actually I've produced a Facebook page which is a commentary on the Gospel of John, but from
Okay.
a secular secular humanist point of view. But
Okay.
I've found it very therapeutic to realize as I do it that you can enjoy the Bible without thinking Christadelphians own this. They don't own it.
Yeah. And now you have to think about it a certain way.
Exactly. You can gather from it what you want. You can admire aspects of Jesus without being committed to saying he's the Messiah, he's going to come back. And the
Yeah.
same way you can like the way Paul writes something, or you think, oh, that's a striking imagery in John, without signing on board or signing your life
Mm-hmm.
away that you've got to believe that it's true. So
Yeah.
I've
And
enjoyed
that has
doing
a
that.
theological value to your life.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of my hobbies that I have sort of carried over from Christadelphia, and I
Mm-hmm.
found enjoyable.
Wonderful. I'm glad that there have been some positives for you. And then we've spoken about Christadelphian history before. You've sent me information for my research, specifically with John Thomas's medical qualifications. We had some back and forth by emails. When did you become interested in Christadelphian history?
Oh, when I did a presentation, I had to get a presentation organised on John Thomas and where he went,
Oh,
and I kept finding that he would be launching into these multi-paragraph tearing into people that had formerly been his friends. And I thought, well, this
yeah.
is very interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
when I did talk on Robert Roberts and read is it Collier's book on Robert Roberts, and he
Yep.
he alludes to these peculiar habits that RR had. I thought, well, this
Mm-hmm.
is worth more investigation, and
Mm-hmm.
so I was reading some more things,
So that was while you were
and
still a Christadelphian.
that's right. And then I discovered that Robert Roberts had not believed in a universal flood, that he had written about how the animals of Australia and New Zealand showed that they were not on Noah's Ark, and that the
Mm.
Noah's flood must have been only the Middle East, right? And I thought, how come my ecclesias that I'm associated with don't
Mm-hmm.
believe that? They believe that whole
It
ridiculous
had to be whole
universal
Earth. Yeah.
flood.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was invited to a dinner. The recorder invited me to a dinner with John Allman, a big speaker from Western Australia, and
Okay.
and the recorder asked John Allman, "Why is it that Noah's flood only leaves 30 feet of sediment at because you're talking about Woolley's idea that Noah's flood was discovered in his excavations
Okay.
at How come it's only 30 feet at but it goes all the way to the top of the mountains uh, in the Himalayas? because, there's fossils at the top
Yeah,
of
those would be
those
pretty
mountains.
different heights. Yeah.
And I thought, he is genuinely asking this question. He is an engineer, and yet he has not grappled with the idea before. And John Allman said, well, Robert Roberts believed there was only a partial part of the earth. He didn't say whether he believed it was only part, but
I think I heard both. I heard that it was the whole world growing up, and then I heard trickles of some people saying, well, maybe it was local as I got older.
But it astounded me that he was the reporter who didn't know what Robert Roberts believed that was totally relevant to his career,
his
with the soils and rocks and stuff like that. But so that interested me in Christadelphian history, and then I discovered all these splits, and many of them were over minor things that could have been fixed, and yet they resulted in thousands, hundreds or thousands being disfellowshipped or leaving Christadelphia, and it just staggered me. And then I could start to see that there were patterns in the history that carried over into the present. There were ways of thinking and acting, cutting off people, not having, being domineering. That
the
were
same behaviors
personality
and beliefs.
problems. Personality quirks that were considered virtues, virtually, carried over into the present by some, by many.
Yeah, I've heard that, especially in Australia. I've heard that come up a number of times, that certain attitudes, and it's just like a cultural attitude, like how they speak or what they value or what, like, how they feel about sports, like random things like that become part of the culture. It's like, oh, this is the model that you should resemble. And people are like, I feel like they're all trying to be like Robert Roberts, but he's not necessarily the example of a happy, healthy guy.
Yes, that's right. A Bible nerd.
He was the hardcore Bible nerd. Has any of the history that I've shared on the podcast surprised you as someone who's been very familiar with it?
Some of it I knew already or suspected, but I think what you've done is marvelous in drawing all those items together and presenting it into a way that shows better than I ever thought the underhand motivations that John Thomas had at times, and his trickery and misrepresentation. I knew that he was doing some things wrong, but I hadn't put it together. Yeah. You did a fantastic job at showing the repeated aspects of this and how it fits into his philosophy of life and his likely motivations.
That was the question: is why is he doing this? If this is a pattern, we need to ask what that means about him.
Yeah, one thing I think hasn't been mentioned that I have heard is like cult leaders, and you have to actually admit that Christadelphia is a cult in its actions and its philosophy and its practice.
How it treats its members, and ex-members.
Its effect on people. It is a cult.
And it's on, and even on development of children in the group. Yeah.
That's right. And like a cult member, both Robert Roberts and John Thomas wanted to live in mansions that had been provided by their followers.
That was something I was thinking about ending my my second part of the series on his medical qualifications on, but I had obviously done a lot of research to get what I got done at the 3-hour episode I released. But one thing that I found so interesting that seemed relevant was at the end of his life, he commissioned Christadelphians to build him a home. The hard thing is proving the financials of those circumstances. What I find telling is that the timing didn't work out for him. He passed away before he was able to officially retire, move back to England, and live in this home that was close enough for him to go to Birmingham, was my understanding. It was like this 2-story like stone house, it looked like, and it was pretty large.
It's absolutely massive because I don't know if you've ever seen the British program The Good Life, but there is the main actress in that, I think it's Felicity Kendall. She grew up in that house, and she was saying that she grew up in that house, and she said it was she was interviewed, and she said it was so big that 3 different families, all her family and 2 relative families, they all lived there, the parents and the children, different levels of the house. So
all I could see was this like old photo. But what was interesting about it, related to its size again, is that they held the first ever like Bible school or like fraternal gathering there, where they had all of the members there. And there's this picture of all of these people in front of this house. So you can see the large scale of this home, and that the property was large enough to accommodate all of these people to be on the grounds. They put up a tent and all this stuff, I guess, to do their fraternal gathering.
And Thomas kept writing letters to the brothers in England about how, this wasn't big enough, add more here. I would like it this way.
I wasn't able to find that. That's the stuff I was looking for.
Very involved in how it should be. How
it was
big
it was going to be a custom built for him.
Oh yeah,
and that was so interesting.
Yeah, and with that big conference, in the photograph, Robert Roberts is sitting in a chair, and the brothers on either side of him, one is J.J. Andrews, and one is, I think, Hadley, and the three brothers behind him, two of which have their hands on his shoulders, right, to show that how supportive they are of Robert Roberts. They all fell out with him over doctrines and got disfellowshipped by him.
Whoa. I mean, he is kind of sitting like a king in his throne.
Yes, that's right. But, I mean, he was really close to J.J. Andrew, and he cut him off because of differences on the atonement. And J.J. Andrew had helped him enormously in the controversy with clean flesh, so-called clean flesh. And so I kept finding, as well as I was reading, that people who'd done a lot of work on the atonement, they kept on going and making these elaborate theories and would end up coming a cropper because they would say something about something that they found or thought that another person misinterpreted or thought that was wrong. So they ended up getting disfellowship themselves. But,
Well, one other thing that I thought was interesting about his house was that when you look at how things happen with Robert Roberts as the executor of John Thomas's estate, he had asked Mrs. Thomas and John Thomas's daughter Eusebia if they wanted to move into the house and come to England. And he was like, your money will go further here. Like, he was trying to really compel them. He's like, you'll be by the meeting, we'll support you. We have this house here. But they were like, no, we'd rather stay here in New Jersey. We're good. And I've Googled that house that they had lived in a while ago and saw it wasn't a huge house that they were living in by any means. It would have certainly been an upgrade. And as they point out, financially, an incentive to move to England. But I thought it was interesting that they weren't like, oh, we'll make sure to sell the house and send you the proceeds. And I thought that was just weird trying to figure out the financials there, because I was like, all right, well, they already have money for their house that they're in, that they've been in for a long time. They're choosing to stay there, and they don't seem in any rush to sell the house to send the money to the widow or anything. See, as they're literally hosting events and like hanging out at this house at that time.
There's a letter in the Christadelphian office from Eusebia Thomas, so Thomas's daughter, and she complains about her poverty, how poor she is, and in the letter she says she's been living off the proceeds from the rent of the house. So she wrote this letter because the person who had built the house wanted to sell it and make a profit, and she's saying, "Well, I'm living off the for years, for many years."
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I know that her finances got so wrapped up in John Thomas's because as his heir, you would think that she would be inheriting all of the assets. But the way John Thomas split it up was that a lot of it remained with the Christadelphian magazine and was funding that project into the future. And so they were kind of managing Eusebia's finances almost because they were kind of holding the assets and having part of that for them. And even in the Christadelphian magazine, they're like, oh, Christadelphians aren't going to pay anything towards this mansion. But I was like, well, it doesn't sound like his family was necessarily footing the whole bill and just like ready to sell it when he died and get the money from it. Like, just the way it was playing out, it sounded like either he's really rich and can afford to build a giant mansion, which from the funds of preaching exclusively and writing and all of this, because it was really just religious activities later in his life, or there was funding from the Christadelphians, who were literally the ones building it and overseeing this too.
And Robert Roberts also, he he moved to Australia because a brother said, well, if you come here, we'll give you a great big mansion in Melbourne to live in. And he did. But, of course, he was singing for his supper because he was lecturing everywhere.
Yeah, he had to, do work for the Christadelphian ecclesias there. But, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so the house in Melbourne for Roberts was donated by a very rich businessman, Christadelphian. I saw with Roberts' son, Dr. Edward Roberts.
Oh, yeah, the one who left? Yeah, the Christadelphians.
Yeah, he left. That not only did he leave, but his sister wife, and he persuaded the two sisters of his wife to leave.
Wow.
And there's this funeral oration that mentioned that their mother, the three daughters' mother, was in floods of tears until she died 5 years later, all because of Robert Roberts' son. So I thought that was interesting. Obviously, I've left too, so I'm not saying you did the wrong thing leaving, but it's important for people to know, I think, that if they're considering leaving, that even Robert Roberts' son left, right?
Yeah.
And there have been lots of brothers and sisters and relatives of well-known Christadelphians who have left Christadelphia.
Yeah, absolutely. So what advice would you give to someone who's considering leaving or has recently left the Christadelphian?
Well, I know it's going to be hard, but I think you should make a group of friends outside of Christadelphia before you leave, because you may lose all your Christadelphian friends, and it can be emotionally very hard. So make some friends before you actually leave would be good. And discuss with some ex-Christadelphians leaving Christadelphia and their experiences and whatever. You'll feel a lot better about doing it. You won't feel like a traitor when you realize that, yes, what you're doing is justified and it's a good thing. It's good for you, and in the long term it's going to be good for other people as well. And read one or two books about leaving high control groups, because you will find that their stories match yours a lot, and they'll give you a lot of insight into what you have been going through that you haven't realized that you've been going through, how you've been self-sabotaging a lot, and that you're hurting yourself by remaining when you're under a lot of stress. And you can't be thinking of leaving without having a lot of stress. Unfortunately, that's one of the signs of a cult group, isn't it? They punish you
that you can't freely leave. Yeah, not know that you have to dread the fallout.
They even punish you for changing your mind about a word or a sentence.
Yeah, that's a pretty high level of control right there. The inability to disagree.
Yep. And when you leave, you must make the effort to develop hobbies and other interests. Develop skills and hobbies. Force yourself, because you've got to feel good about yourself progressing in some other area. And
because it is almost like regressing when you're like, well, now I don't know what I believe at all. I'm starting from scratch.
Oh, whatever. There's no
starting over socially with a new social group, all that stuff. It's a lot of starting over.
And I think, too, it certainly helped me. I think it probably would help a lot of people, is give yourself a break from contact with Christadelphians for a while. I don't know how long it was going to be, a few weeks, a few months, even a few years in some people's cases. But, the guilt and blaming and other things that go on there is just too much to handle when you're already feeling a bit bad about having left people behind, some people behind. Yeah, so that's what I would recommend.
Right. And is there anything else like books, music, podcasts, or any other resources that you wanted to share?
Oh, before I do,
okay.
I want to say what current Christadelphians should do when people are in the process of leaving or have left. And that is that you should say and show that you love them just as much after leaving as you did before, even though it might hurt you to force yourself to say that. But
that would probably help that person, though. Yeah,
it will help them enormously. And you've got to prove to them that you love them by including them in quality time, not just the occasional cup of tea or whatever, or a Facebook post, something like that.
And with no ulterior motives.
That's right. They're people. Treat them as
Treat
people,
them as
love
a
them as
person.
people. They're
Yeah,
your
without
son
the
or daughter
religion.
or friend or whatever.
Yeah, you don't have to bring up religion with them. You can just spend time with them as a person.
That's right. Only let them bring up Christadelphia, which they eventually will do, when they want to, if they want to. Don't you bring it up. They already know it's in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
That's my advice to people who, are still Christadelphians and care about people who are leaving or have left.
That's fair. I think that's fair to say. I appreciate you sharing that.
So you asked about things, resources that I thought
was
would
there
be
anything
good
else you wanted to share before we wind down?
Yeah, the book that helped me, or that's a bit too much about Jehovah's Witnesses, that helped me to leave when I was in my early 20s, was a book from 1978 called Visions of Glory, A History and Memory of Jehovah's Witnesses, and it's by Barbara Grazzuti Harrison. Now, obviously, it's Jehovah's Witnesses, but it is so similar to Christadelphians and things that go through your mind and things that they say to you and whatever, that it really spoke to me.
There's a lot of overlap with Jehovah's Witnesses.
That's right. And there are two books that I read later after leaving that helped me. One is, even years later, one is called Leaving the Fold, A Guide to Recovery from Fundamentalism and Other Rigid Religions. And that's by Marlene Winnell.
She's a classic,
Minnell from 1993. Yep. And there's another book called When Religion Hurts You, Healing from Religious Trauma and Impact of High Control Religion by Laura Anderson. That's from 1993 as well. And for podcasts, I like listening to the humanist, atheist or non-religious or don't push it down your throat scholars like Bart Ehrman and Dan McClellan. They've got great insights in their podcasts or when they're interviewed by other people about where the Bible really came from, what it's really trying to do, what it's not trying to do, and misconceptions and whatever. And I found them very good. And for websites, I think the ecclesias.com is worth looking at.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all those resources with our listeners.
Oh, and if you're interested in what I put on Facebook, there's my Facebook page that's called Gospel of John, a commentary by Craig Fairweather. And I think you'll find that you can, if you have a look at some of the things there, you'll find some things that you can enjoy whether you're a believer or not a believer. And I'm not a believer, as I said.
Yeah, so coming from the perspective of someone who's not a believer, I'm more than happy to link it below for people who are curious about that as well. That can be in the episode description.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I believe that brings us to the end of the episode, unless there's anything else you wanted to share before we wind down today.
I just want to say how much I appreciate your work, Xenia.
Aw, thank you.
So empathetic, so understanding, so logical. And there are so many brilliant people in the Facebook page, the ex-Christadelphian Facebook page, who've shared their experiences and their insights, and they're fantastic. And Christadelphia has lost so much by letting them go or pushing them out or not taking their needs into consideration. And I just want to say to all the people on the Facebook page, well done, and all the best to you from me. And I know I've had a wonderful life outside Christadelphia, and I hope you have a wonderful life too.
It's wonderful to see, again, another story of someone who's been out for so long, created a whole life outside of it. And of course, still highlights that there's certain things that stick with you that you still think about and consider and ponder. But you've been able to live a true life, a happy life, to find meaning in your life. You're not lost without being a Christadelphian. If anything, you have grown into a more confident, happy person. And you would not have had that opportunity if you had been a Christadelphian.
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you for sharing your story so openly. I know some topics can be hard to talk about, but I really appreciate you sharing so much. You really saw a certain time that was pretty rough, it sounds like, with a lot going on.
Thank you, and all the best for what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate your support for the podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing resources. And thank you for now today coming on so I could finally meet you face to face, even though we're across the world from each other. So thanks again for coming on the podcast today and sharing your story. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. That's all for today's episode. I hope you're all feeling inspired to live your truth, and stay tuned for our next episode. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hello, everyone. This is our last episode for season 4. So I always like to give you a little update at the end of the season. First, I want to give a big thank you to all of our podcast guests who came on to share their stories and perspectives or expertise with us this season. I really appreciate you all, and it makes the podcast better to have all of you doing this with me. Second, I usually like to end the season with a mini history episode, but unfortunately, I just didn't have the time to do that for this season. I think it was worth it though, because I was able to release that 3-hour second part of my research into John Thomas's medical qualifications, and I was able to bring you 4 discussion episodes on the kingdom and on LGBTQ plus issues in Christadelphia. Those episodes all required a lot of preparation and research to make, so that's why I didn't have time to do another dive into more history. But don't worry, I have many more interesting history topics to explore with you in future seasons. Speaking of the next season, I wanted to let you know about a few changes going forward. One change is that this will be the last season with episodes coming out nearly every week. One reason is that I will actually be taking some classes during the next year, so I'll be reducing the number of episodes to about 6 a season max, and probably releasing like every other week or so instead. I'm still planning another season for later this year, but again, it would probably be more like 6 episodes. And conveniently enough, that would bring us to 50 episodes of the Life After Leaving podcast. Less than 10% of all podcasts achieve that, so that would actually be a really cool milestone to hit this year. And of course, things are fluid, so if anything changes, I'll post an update to the podcast social media, but that's the plan for now. Another reason why I plan on doing shorter seasons is that we've also had less people reaching out to be interviewed for the podcast. So I think it's more sustainable to move into a smaller and slower phase of podcast production. I do have some potential interviewees for the next season later this year, but after that, I mean, I've finally worked through the backlog of people who have been waiting to be interviewed. So if you all want another season in early 2027, then I'm going to need to hear from more people who want to contribute if we're going to have interviews. And I don't know if this will encourage some people, but I did make like a wish list of sorts for podcast guests. So if you're a listener and any of these sounds like you, I'd really love to hear from you. Okay, here's my wish list. I'd love to finally have a woman from the UK on the podcast. Girls, where are you? And more people from the UK in general. I would love to chat with someone from New Zealand. I know you're listening, but no one's reaching out. On that note, it would be fun to have people from other countries that we haven't heard from yet, and also the other subgroups in Christadelphia that we don't hear from much or at all. I want to hear from some of these people who went Catholic after leaving, because I know there's a few of you, and I want to know how that happened. And I definitely would love it to have a biblical scholar or someone with similar expertise come on to discuss the New Testament with me, just like I've done with Professor Steve regarding the Old Testament on the podcast. So I don't know, maybe this little wish list will help nudge a few more people, but I also understand there are reasons why some people may not want to come on the show, whether it's privacy, sensitivity to certain issues, not emotionally ready. I get it. So no pressure if any of that applies to you. And while I'm wrapping up this season, I usually like to mention the podcast statistics as well. After 2 years and 4 seasons of the podcast, we've had over 22,000 episode downloads and listeners in at least 48 countries. So that's pretty cool, and we have grown quite a bit. And while I won't be releasing any new episodes for a while, As always, I'm going to be working on episodes behind the scenes. I'm still going to be checking emails, and I'll be checking the podcast direct messages. So feel free to reach out. I do really enjoy hearing from listeners, and it helps keep me motivated since I'm dedicating so much of my time to this project. So feel free to reach out if you've enjoyed the podcast, share a little bit about you. And of course, there's no obligation to be on the podcast. I just like hearing from you guys. I also made a Substack to post about whatever projects I'm working on, which is usually crafts or stuff related to this podcast. So feel free to follow me over on Substack at Crafts and Cults to keep up with what I'm working on and researching. And as always, the best way to hear about when new episodes come out is to subscribe or follow the show in your favorite podcast player. So feel free to do that so that you'll get notified when the next season is ready to come out. And if you want to show your appreciation or help other people find the show, please continue to like, share, and leave reviews for the podcast as well. All right, that's it for season 4. Bye, everyone.